If you've been following the channel for a while, if you've been following the streams for a while, then you know that all the holidays that we have here in America are pagan, come from pagan customs, specifically Roman customs in a lot of cases. All right, so I'm going to touch on that briefly, but then we'll get into this lesson that I got here on elections. But yeah, when it comes to the Super Bowl, it's just a distraction. That's all it is. And a lot of people will be like, well, I tune in for the commercials, like literally the distractions, the advertisements. Sports in general is just a distraction. And sports in general kind of tie back into what we're going to be talking about tonight as far as the origins of democracy. It comes from the same place. It comes from ancient Greece. And we're going to see how the Bible talks about ancient Greece. All right, and let me tell you, it's not very favorable. So before we get into anything, I just want to make sure everything is going smoothly. Let's take a look at that, see if there's any problems with the connection or the audio, video, whatever the case may be. Smoothly. It appears everything's all right. All praises to the Most High for that one. But yeah, Valentine's Day goes back to Lupercalia. It's a fertility festival where the men would run around beating the women with like whips that they made from like a lot of it was like dog skins, goat skins, things like that. They would make whips out of that and just run around beating women and essaying them and R-wording them. I don't necessarily want to use the words because they can be offensive to some, but forcing them into sex. That's what they would do. They'd run around, just grab women and some of the women were into that. Some of the women weren't, but they didn't care. They just run around doing that type of stuff. All right, so that's what it goes back to, that wickedness, that evil, those pagan customs. And again, it was a pagan custom for fertility rituals. That's why everybody's talking about, you got to treat your woman nice for Valentine's Day so, you can get laid that night. That's what a lot of people in the world are talking about. It's a fertility festival. It's not of God. All right. So we'll go ahead and get that first in Colossians 2. This Colossians 2 shuts down everything that isn't biblical. All right. Every holiday that you celebrate that isn't in the Bible, that the Bible doesn't ordain, including Christmas, because even Valentine's Day, they'll take, who the Catholics named Saint Valentine. They'll say it's about him, but it really goes back further than that. The same way that they'll take something like Saturnalia and call it Christmas and, take a pagan custom and try to make it Christian. That's what they were doing throughout the Middle Ages. They would take pagan customs, put Christian names on them to appease both, types of people. The people who still worshiped idols and the people who served God. So that's what all that was about. And then they would kill anybody who didn't want to keep these customs. But Colossians 2:8, it says, beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit. All right, so that's a big thing in the world now. Is philosophy. Not only that, but meaningless lies. That's what vain deceit means. Unnecessary lies. After the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ. All right, so after the rudiments of the world, everything that everybody in the world is doing, that's the opposite of Christ. All right, a lot of people don't understand that. They say, well, I can. It's just a tradition. It's for the kids or whatever. I just want some chocolate or whatever the case may be. I just want some roses on that day. If it's after the world, it's not after Christ, right? So why is it maybe 2 days a year that your husband gets you flowers, right? That should be like a regular thing. You know what I'm saying? And sorry to put pressure on the men, but hey, it is what it is. You wait for 1 day out of the year to give gifts for your wife. You should probably be doing that more often. All right? But yeah, anything after the tradition of men and after the rudiments of the world is not after Christ. All right, so you got to keep that in mind. And I was reading this earlier in 2 Thessalonians 2. And 2 Thessalonians 2 go hard. It's another topic for another day. But 2 Thessalonians, I got towards the end of it, and it says, therefore, brethren, this is verse 15. 2 Thessalonians 2 and verse 15. Therefore, brethren, stand fast and hold the traditions which ye have been taught, whether by word or our epistle. Right? So, on one hand, he told the Colossians, he said, don't follow after the traditions of men, but after Christ. But he told the Thessalonians, stand fast and hold the traditions that you've been taught, whether it's by the word of God or by the epistles of the apostles. All right. So that is, keep the traditions like the Passover, like the Pentecost, like the Feast of Tabernacles, like the Day of Atonement, like Hanukkah, like Purim. We just got done with Purim. That's why my mom wasn't on Valentine's Day. It was on Purim. A lot of people don't understand that. The traditions that God give, there's far more of them. Like what do we have in the world? We have Christmas, New Year's, Valentine's Day, 4th of July. What else? Like Thanksgiving, Halloween, right? That's what we have in the world. How many days is that? That's like what, 6 days out of the year? God, under God's traditions, you have a feast day every week called the Sabbath. All right. And then not only that, you have a new moon every month on top of that. And not only that, you have your seasonal feast days, like I just mentioned, the Passover, Pentecost, Day of Atonement, Feast of Tabernacles, Hanukkah. And Passover is a week long. Feast of Tabernacles is 8 days long. Hanukkah is 8 days long. So like Purim is a 3-day event when you talk about the day of the destruction of Nicanor that comes before it, who was also a Greek. All right. So yeah. The day of Simon also is a day that, I neglected to mention. But the point is, God give us so much more in the Bible, but people just refuse to do it. They would rather hold the traditions of men and not the traditions of God that was written in the Word of God and given by, the apostles of Christ. Which the apostles of Christ, they didn't do the Valentine's Day. They didn't do Christmas. They did Pentecost. They did Passover. All right, they did the Day of Atonement. A lot of Christians refuse to acknowledge that. People in Christianity refuse to acknowledge that. Real Christians are going to do that and do what the Word says to do. They're going to live by every word of God, like what Christ said to do. All right. But yeah, the whole Super Bowl thing's a distraction. We might get into that a little later, but really, what we're going to get into is right here on the Pakistan election. And reading this, like, Pakistan is not like that big of a deal when it comes to like the world events that are going on right now. This is like kind of in the background, right? And of course we do have more escalation over there in the Middle East. The state of Israel, the wicked state of Israel, is still trying to destroy all the people in Gaza, right? They're just escalating that further and further. A report come out about the U.S. underestimating the ability to which these Iran-backed militias had the, power, I should say, had military might. They thought there's no way that they could touch us, and then, something happened where 3 Americans died, and now America's just bombing 3 different, or a lot of different places over there in Iraq and Syria. But anyway, the Pakistan elections, you had Imran Khan and Nawaz Sharif, but they both claimed they won the election. All right, we'll get into how that's even possible. Because I was reading these bullet points, and I was like, wait a minute, none of this makes any sense. All right. So we'll just get into the full article, and we may or may not read it. We may jump around, but I just want to get into less the specifics of Pakistan, more the generality of elections, I suppose, and their election just as an example. Former Pakistani prime ministers and bitter rivals Nawaz Sharif and Imran Khan on Friday both declared victory in elections marred by delayed results and militant attacks, throwing the country into further political turmoil, right? So you sit back and you look, because look at the last election that we had here in America in 2020. And there's all sorts of controversy around that election, right? And of course, you see the same thing in Pakistan 4 years later. And it's not like it started with the U.S. There's always been controversies in just about every election, at least for the past 20 years, all right? Even in 2016 here in America, Hillary, when she lost, claimed there was some, election fraud or collusion between Trump and Russia, right? So there's always some claims to elections being illegitimate, all right? Sharif's party, so you have Nawaz Sharif and Imran Khan. Those are the two who are opposing each other in this instance. Sharif's party won the most seats by a single party in Thursday's election, but supporters of imprisoned Khan, who ran as independents instead of a single bloc after his party was barred from the polls, won the most seats overall, right? So you had one guy, Imran Khan, win the most chairs, win the most seats overall, and I suppose their parliament and or their senate, whatever they want to call it. He won the most seats, but Pakistan has a special rule outlined in their constitution where you have to be a part of a political party to win the election, essentially. And if an independent wins, he has to join a party to actually and officially win the election, all right? Sharif said his party would talk to other groups to form a coalition government as it had failed to win a clear majority on its own, right? So you had this Sharif guy who is not in jail, I believe, who is not in jail and was affiliated with a political party. And he said, look, even though they won the most seats, he's in jail, he can't rule, he's an independent as well. We have to form a coalition with other political parties to actually establish a government in Pakistan. Sharif's announcement came after more than 3/4 of the 265 seats had declared results. More than 24 hours after polling ended on Thursday, when 28 people were killed in militant attacks, right? So this is taking the whole, U.S. election fraud to the next level, because there was actually there was an attack on the Capitol, which really didn't really go anywhere, especially the way that those people who rushed in thought it would. But here you had like severe militant attacks actually, like around the election time, around before the counts, the votes even got in, right? Analysts had predicted there may be no clear winner, adding to the woes of a country struggling to recover from an economic crisis while it grapples with rising militancy in a deeply polarized political environment, right? They're headed toward like a civil war, all right? So the comparisons between the U.S. and this election, even though this one is, a little bit more complex, probably just because we don't really understand the rules of what's going on over there. I know I don't. I'm not well researched in the history of Pakistani politics, right? I don't know much about that. I just know that this election is turning into a real crap show. Use a nice word there. All right. The results showed independents, most of them backed by Khan, had won the most seats. 98 of the 245 counted by, that time, 6:30 GMT. Sharif's Pakistan Muslim League, which is PML Nawaz, won 69, while the Pakistan People's Party of Bilawal, Bhutto Zardari, the son of assassinated Premier Benazir Bhutto, got 51, right? So you had the independents win 98, Sharif's party won 69, and Bhutto's party won 51. So those were the actual results. But again, it's more complex than that when it comes to Pakistani elections, because the independents must be a part of a political party to actually hold any power, all right? The rest were won by small parties and other independents. Pakistan Muslim League is the single largest party in the country today after the elections, and it is our duty to bring this country out of the whirlpool, Sharif told a crowd of supporters gathered outside his home in the eastern city of Lahore. Whoever has got the mandate, whether independents or parties, we respect the mandate they have got, he said. We invite them to sit with us and help this wounded nation get back on its feet. All right, so they said, look, the only way we're going to save the country is if we come together. All right. Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, PTI party, released an audio-visual message created using artificial intelligence and shared on his X social media account. That's the new name. That's the new name of Twitter. In the message, which is usually delivered by word through his lawyers, Khan, 71, rejected Sharif's claim to victory, congratulated his supporters on winning, quote unquote, winning the election, and urged them to celebrate and protect their vote, right? So here's a literal case only a few months before the election here in America, where a man won from jail. All right, does that sound familiar? With the most winningest party. All right, I trusted that you all would come out to vote, and you honored that trust, and your massive turnout has shocked everyone, the message said. Adding, no one would accept Sharif's claim because he had won fewer seats and because there had been rigging in the polls. The polls are rigged. All right. Former cricket superstar Khan has been in jail since August and was convicted 3 times in 6 days in the lead up to the polls for 10, 14, and 7 years in cases related to state secrets, graft, and an unlawful marriage, right? So I'm not going to get into the details of his case, but he's a former entertainer turned politician, and the months leading up to the election, he was on trial for numerous crimes. Sound familiar? Sharif, 74, a 3-time former premier, returned from 4 years of self-imposed exile in the United Kingdom late last year. Right? Sharif left Pakistan to go learn from the Europeans. Specifically, the people who say that they're not Europeans anymore, the Brexit people, right? The UK. Having contested the last election from a jail cell on a graft conviction. So he was in a jail cell last time, saying, oh, the polls are rigged. Now the shoe's on the other foot. It's all a mess. It's all a mess. He was considered the front runner to lead the country, having buried a long-running feud with the powerful military. Sharif said his party would have preferred to win a majority of its own, but in the absence of that, would get in touch with others, including former President Asif Ali Zardari of PPP, to open negotiations as early as Friday night. Right? So Sharif, now that he spent his exile, his self-imposed exile, where he just fled the country, and probably, and this is speculation on my part, but probably has some MI6 influence in Pakistan, came back and said, look, we got to establish a government that excludes that guy who really won in jail. All right? In its first reaction, a senior aide of Khan said PTI leaders would hold talks among themselves and also meet Khan in jail on Saturday to discuss the results, Geo News reported. Right, so that one political party, that one side of the aisle is saying, we're not working with you. We're not working with the other side of the aisle or with any other parties. We won the most seats, so we're going to go talk to our leader in jail. All right, results of the vote have been unusually delayed, which the caretaker government ascribed to the suspension of mobile phone services, a security measure ahead of the election. Oh man, they said we got to take away your phones before the election. Not only, well, I'm gonna tell you the given reason, I'm gonna tell you the real reason. The given reason is, at least here in the States, would be that, social media influences elections. These big tech companies will spread misinformation or whatever the case to influence elections. But really, phones are used to interact with other people. And you could coordinate votes if you could talk to a lot of people on a phone. All right? And I mean through social media. I don't mean through like you actually calling people and canvassing or whatever. Let's see. Independent members cannot form a government on their own under Pakistan's complex election system, which also includes reserved seats that will be allotted to parties based on their winnings. But independents have the option to join any party after the elections, right? So that's basically the rules in Pakistan, that independents, they can't hold office. You must join a party before you can hold office, but you can vote as an independent, and once you have gotten a seat, you can join any party you want to, right? So that whole like independent from political party system sounds like a better system, but you see how it just creates its own problems. All right. Yeah, I'm not necessarily going to get into the rest of this, because you can see how this is going, how this is all just a big mess. And again, it's not just Pakistan. We see the similarities between what's happening in Pakistan and in the U.S. So it's not just the Pakistanis and the U.S. This has been happening everywhere since there have been elections. All right. So let's go to the origins of democracy. All right, I ain't talking about like what the UN classifies as democracy. Let's go to the origins. I'm not talking about what they call democracy today. I'm talking about the origins. Let's go to the history of democracy. All right, history right here. This is Wikipedia. This is talking about democracy, right? And of course, the thing with Wikipedia is it's not a reliable source on its own, but Wikipedia provides sources. So if you prefer something like Britannica, which is its own source and gathers from other sources or whatever, then that's fine. But Wikipedia is essentially the same thing as Britannica and all those other like encyclopedia websites or whatever. It says the history of democracy. Democratic assemblies are as old as the human species and are found throughout human history, right? So just people coming together to decide on something has been happening forever. But up until the 19th century, which is the 1800s, major political figures have largely opposed democracy. So why is it that major political figures would oppose democracy? Now, a lot of people these days would say, oh, they don't want the people to have a voice. That may be a part of it, but let's keep reading. Republican theorists, and that's not Republican as in the Republican Party here in America, that's Republican as in people who advocate for republics over democracies. Republican theorists linked democracy to small size. As political units grew in size, the likelihood increased that the government would turn despotic, right? So it could become chaotic, it could be overrun if a country is a smaller size, right? It could be overtook quite easily. It could be conquered quite easily. At the same time, small political units were vulnerable to conquest. There you go. Montesquieu wrote, if a republic be small, it is destroyed by a foreign force. If it be large, it is ruined by an internal imperfection. All right, keep that in mind. According to Johns Hopkins University political scientist Daniel Doudny, the creation of the United States with its large size and its system of checks and balances was a solution to the dual problems of size. Was it really though? Because America is large and it is also ruined by an internal imperfection. The people here in America have ruined America. All right? Not that America was ever supposed to be great in the first place, but the point is that America is too large for it not to be corrupted, all right? Especially with the laws and the Constitution that America started with. You think freedom of religion is godly? Of course not. All right, freedom of religion, that's nowhere in the Bible. But they said that so that they could be ungodly as they wanted to be, or as godly as they wanted to be. All right? Retrospectively, different, what does it say? Polities outside of declared democracies have been described as proto-democratic, right? So let's actually get into the origins of the term and where it comes from. The term democracy, the term democracy, it keeps jumping up like that. I'm just trying to highlight where I'm at. The term democracy, it keeps doing it. I'm not doing that. Man, that's crazy. But anyway, the term democracy first appeared in ancient Greek political and philosophical thought in the city-state of Athens during classical antiquity, right? So democracy, the term, and the philosophy first came from ancient Greece. That's where it came from, all right? The word comes from demos, common people, and kratos, meaning force or might, meaning the people hold the power. That's what the term democracy literally means. The people hold the power. All right? Under Cleisthenes, whatever, what is generally held as the first example of a type of democracy in 508 to 507 BC. Keep those dates in mind. 508 to 507 BC is when democracy first came around in ancient Greece. Was established in Athens. Cleisthenes is referred to as the father of Athenian democracy. The first attested use of the word democracy is found in prose works of the 430s BC, such as Herodotus' Histories. But its usage was older by several decades, as two Athenians born in the 470s were named Democrates, a new political name likely in support of democracy, given at a time of debates over constitutional issues in Athens. So we know that the speculation is that it come from around 508 to 507 BC, and they based that upon what happened in the 470s and what happened in the 430s, all right? Given at a time, okay, I just read that. Aeschylus also strongly alludes to the word in his play The Suppliant, staged in 463 BC, where he mentions the demos ruling hand. Before that time, the word used to define the new political system of Cleisthenes was probably isonomia, meaning political equality. All right? Let's keep reading on this. Athenian democracy took the form of a direct democracy. All right, so it wasn't representative democracy, it was direct democracy. And it had two distinguishing features: the random selection of ordinary citizens to fill the few existing governments, administrative, and judicial offices, right? So they would just pick random people to fill government offices, all right? And a legislative assembly consisting of all Athenian citizens. All eligible citizens were allowed to speak and vote in the assembly, which set the laws of the city-state. So they would just gather citizens together and say, hey, whatever we come up with together, that's what the new law is going to be. All right? However, Athenian citizenship excluded women, slaves, foreigners, and youths below the age of military service. Effectively, only 1 in 4 residents in Athens qualified as citizens. So even then, when they said, hey, the power's in the hands of the people, only about 25% of the people actually held any power. All right? So again, that wasn't even a real democracy. All right? But even in that case, it did not last. Owning land was not a requirement of citizenship. The exclusion of large parts of the population from the citizen body is closely related to the ancient understanding of citizenship. All right, so from there, it just goes on to say citizenship was tied to military service. But we see here that democracy was established in Athens in around 500s, maybe BC, 400s definitely. All right. So let's jump down. Okay, no. I want to read these next two paragraphs. And then we'll call it a day. All right, at least on this, we'll get into the scriptures, Athenian democracy was not only direct in the sense that decisions were made by the assembled people, but also the most direct in the sense that the people through the assembly, boule, and courts of law controlled the entire political process, and a large proportion of citizens were involved constantly in the public business, right? So everybody had to be involved. Everybody, as in like 25%, maybe 30% of the people had to be involved constantly, all right? Those are the citizens. All the citizens had to be involved constantly. That's the whole thing about democracy, all right? Even though the rights of the individual were not secured by the Athenian constitution in the modern sense, the ancient Greeks had no word for rights. So the Greeks who come up with democracy, a lot of people talking about your right to vote and you got to preserve your rights through democracy. The people who come up with democracy didn't even have a word for rights. The people who try to preserve democracy don't care about your rights. All right? That's important to understand. Those who were citizens of Athens enjoyed their liberties not in opposition to the government, but by living in a city that was not subject to another power and by not being subjects themselves to the rule of another person. All right? So, let's keep going. Range voting appeared in Sparta as early as 700 BC. The Spartan ecclesia was an assembly. Come on now. The Spartan ecclesia was an assembly of the people held once a month in which every male citizen of at least 20 years of age could participate. In the assembly, Spartans elected leaders and cast votes by range voting and shouting. The vote is then decided on how loudly the crowd shouts. So in Sparta, and we'll get into Sparta here in a minute, in Sparta, it was literally a popularity contest, all right? If you could go up on stage and get the people to chant or chant yes to whatever proclamation you're trying to set forward, then that's how things would be voted on. All right? Like quite literally direct democracy. All right? Let's see. It says Aristotle called this childish as compared with the stone voting ballots used by the Athenian citizenry. All right, so the Spartans are basically doing the same thing as the Greeks here, and I made a distinction between the Spartans and the Greeks, and we'll see why here in a minute, but they're basically doing the same thing, but Aristotle still looked down on them because of how they did it. It's called it childish, but they're basically doing the same thing, right? Just in a different way. Sparta adopted it because of its simplicity and to prevent any biased voting, buying, or cheating that was predominant in the early democratic elections, right? So since democracy began, people have been rigging elections through those same stone ballots that Aristotle was praising. The Spartans said, look, we're trying to get rid of corruption. There's how we do it directly. This is what the people said. This is what the people gonna get. That's how the Spartans did it. Sure, it may be simplistic and childish, but that's definitely more of a direct democracy than what Aristotle and them were doing in Athens. All right, and we can stop it right there. It goes on to say down here that the Iroquois nation has a semi-democratic means of control over there, but we see how well that helped them from America invading. It did not help them at all. So keep in mind that Athens and Greece, Athens being the capital of Greece, had democracy from, say, the 400s BC, at the very earliest, or at the very earliest 500s BC. All right. So let's see how the Greeks came into power. Was it by democracy and voting? How did the Greeks conquer the world, conquer the ancient world? Was it by democracy and voting? First Maccabees 1:1. Let's get to the scriptures. And it happened after that, Alexander, the son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece. All right. So Alexander, the first over Greece, it said he smote Darius, king of the Persians and Medes. He didn't vote Darius he didn't vote Darius out of power. He killed him and took his land by force. That's how the Greeks came into power. And when was this? As you can see right here. And you know how America, how Britain, how Europeans, how white people love Alexander. They call him the Great. All right? You see, the Bible don't call him that. It just called him Alexander, the son of Philip the Macedonian. He was the first over Greece. The Bible don't call him the Great. But they have a specific date as to when this happened. The Battle of Gaugamela, also called Battle of Arabella, October 1st, 331 BC. Battle in which Alexander the Great completed his conquest of Darius III's Persian Empire. It was an extraordinary victory achieved against a numerically superior army on ground chosen by the Persians. You see how they love to big up Alexander? They love putting him over. But he, even though he was the first real ruler of the Greeks in any meaningful sense, in any empire type sense, he didn't get land by voting for it. He didn't do things by voting for things to happen. He didn't do things democratically. He took things by power and by force. That's how he got things done. All right? So democracy has never worked. It has never worked. All right? But let's keep reading on the Greeks, what they did to the world. And made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth, right? So that's what Alexander did. He made it all the way to India, all right? And went through to the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, right? Nobody was able to war against Alexander. He was that powerful. Whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up. And he gathered a mighty strong host and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. They paid him taxes. And after these things, he fell sick and perceived that he should die, right? And depending on who you're talking to, they may say that sickness was a fever. They may say that it was syphilis. It just depends on who you talk to, all right? Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. So all of his servants. Let me just make this a little bigger real quick so I can pull up. All his servants, he split up his land among all his servants. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and do, let's see if I got a photo of this. I'm pretty sure I do. Under maps. Let's see. Of who he split his land amongst. And let's see. Do I got that? It's somewhere else. No, I thought I had it. I don't see it here nowhere. Scythia. No, Greek civilization? That might be it. Let's see. Or is this just the whole empire that he had? Yeah, this is Alexander's Greek empire. Let me bring this back down. Not that. Bring that back. Y'all give me 1 second. Bring that back down. All right. And I'll move this. Actually, I'll close that down. That's what Alexander took. All right, all that region, that's what Alexander took. All this region from Macedonia up here, that's where he was from. And he took all this, again, all the way to India and down through Egypt, all of that stuff. He took all that stuff. But I thought I had a picture of how he split everything up. And maybe I do, but it's just not under this. Again, just give me 1 moment. Give me 1 second, please. Let's see if I can find it real quick. He split it amongst his 4 generals. One was named Ptolemy. He gave Egypt to Ptolemy. He gave Syria and the Syrian region in the Middle East there to Seleucus. And he split up Turkey and Greece amongst Cassander and Lysimachus. All right. Please just bear with me 1 second. Trying to find. Oh, okay, this might be it right here. Yep, Greece divided. I should put that in the maps. I ain't put it in my maps folder yet. Anyway, you see this right here. This is how he split it up. As you can see down here, Seleucus is in the orange. He give all this to Seleucus. He give, maybe I can zoom in a little bit. I don't know how well y'all can see that. There we go. He give, come on now. Scoot this on over so y'all maybe see this a little better. He give, there we go. He give Egypt, or rather all this pink, to Ptolemaeus. He give the green, which is up here, to Lysimachus. So that would be Asia, what they call Asia, or Asia Minor, he give to Lysimachus. And Macedonia and Greece, he give to Cassander up here. All right? So that's what that's going into, his servants. All right? Parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. Verse 7. So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died. And his servants bare rule, every one in his place. Right? And that's what we just looked at on the map. That's all those 4 generals. All right? And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. Right? So that's what happened with the Greek kingdom. After Alexander died, there was no more unified king. And all those other kings, as you read in the book of the Maccabees, in the history of the Maccabees, you see that all the different kings started fighting against each other and started trying to take land from each other and started conspiring against each other, right? Sometimes they would make leagues and covenants and treaties with each other, but mostly it was just infighting, all right? It was just a bunch of chaos and war is what ended up happening. And after his death, they all put crowns on themselves. So did their sons after them many years. And evils were multiplied in the earth. So that's what happened when Greece came into power. Evils were multiplied in the earth. One of those things was democracy. That's a philosophy of the Greeks. All right. And even by the time of Alexander, they saw democracy wasn't working. Force and power is what works. All right. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, or some people say Antiochus, but it's the same thing. Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been a hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. Right. So this Antiochus, this is Antiochus the fourth, son of Antiochus the third, surnamed Epiphanes, meaning God manifested on earth. That's what he called himself. He called himself God manifested on earth because he was the devil, all right? And he came from that Seleucus line, all right? That's the territory that he ruled initially. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So there was wicked Israelites who said, hey, let's take on those Greek customs. Let's be like Greeks. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Right? So they got a license. They got their they got their certificate for their business. They got their government grant, right? Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem, according to the customs of the heathen. A gymnasium, where they could work out and play sports. All right? Just like the Greeks. And the Greeks, they specifically, the term gymnasium means a place of naked exercise. That's why you see people in sports wearing skimpy clothing, wearing tight clothing. All right. In some places, sports have got away from that, but in others, you still see it. It's very prominent, especially when like Sports Illustrated does their swimsuit issues. It's still very prominent that they want to be like the Greeks. All right. They built a gymnasium at Jerusalem, according to the customs of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. Right. So that's what the kingdom of the Greeks did. That's what the Greeks did. They perpetuated evils throughout the earth. All right. So when you see America and all these other countries honoring Greece and saying, oh, the Greek civilization was the beginning of Western civilization. It's all evil. It's all wicked. All right? That's where all this came from. And the Greeks, they weren't the origin of anything other than, their own personal Greek customs. All right? Most of their religious practices came from Eastern pagan customs that they adopted from Egypt, that Egypt, took from those pagan customs out in Babylon. And what else? I mean, I guess you could say their architecture, but even that, columns, they didn't invent columns like that. They just used them very, very prominently. What else? What else the Greeks did? It's slipping my mind now, but it'll come back to me at some point. Their alphabet came from the Phoenicians, the Hebrew alphabet. The Greeks didn't even have an alphabet until the Israelites and Phoenicians got there. All right, and the Israelite-Phoenician connection. If you don't know that, I've done extensive videos on that, so check that out. Bible History 101, and I even did one when talking about the problems in Africa today all come from the Israelite-Phoenician connection. But anyway, back to the point here about the Greeks. This is 1 Maccabees 1, starting with 41. We're going to jump down. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people. That everybody should be keeping the Greek customs. Everybody should be doing what we doing. All right? And everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. So because all the other nations don't have a real God, they don't have laws that they serve to please their God, they said, all right, sure, we'll do Greek customs. Just like the world today said, sure, we'll follow American customs. We'll follow these secular customs. Why not? All right. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion. Right? So his religion, that all should be one people, included democracy and democratic philosophies. All right? Because the whole point of democracy is to make you think you have power, to make you think that what you say matters. It doesn't. It doesn't. What matters is who has the power, who has the might to make things happen. That's what matters. All right? And of course, I don't want people to take this the wrong way. I'm not encouraging sedition. Sedition is ungodly. What we need to do is come back to God, because a physical revolution can be squashed. A spiritual revolution can never be destroyed. All right? Understand that thing. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath. For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land. Right? So Antiochus got word. They said, look, these Jews, these Israelites in Judea, they're not following the law the same way that everybody else is. They haven't left their laws. They haven't left their God. So he had to send specific letters to Jerusalem saying, look, y'all got to do this too. All right? And forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people. That was the end goal, was to pollute the holy people. Set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, right? Just do everything that the law says not to do. That's what he was trying to urge the people to do. Do everything that the law says not to do. That they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. That was the end. That was the end goal that Antiochus had in mind, that the holy people should leave their holy laws. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die. All right? So you got put to death for following God in those days. That's what the Greeks did. The Greeks made an order that said, look, we're going to kill you if you serve God. That's what the Greeks did. All right? In the selfsame manner wrote he to his whole kingdom, and appointed overseers over all the people, commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice city by city. All right? So this is He even told the neighboring countries that were around Judea, said, look, make them keep the Greek ordinances instead of their laws. Then many of the people were gathered unto them, to wit, everyone that forsook the law, and so they committed evils in the land, and drove the Israelites into secret places, even wheresoever they could flee for succor. Now the 15th day of the month Caslu, in the 145th year, right? So Antiochus came to power in the 137th year. This is 8 years later. They set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar and builded idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side. See, that's what Daniel prophesied would come. The Greeks coming to destroy the temple, or rather pollute it, not physically destroy it, but pollute it. All right. And burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. And when they had rent in pieces the books of the law which they found, they burnt them with fire. All right, so they were burning Bibles. They would find the Bible and then rip it up and burn it. That's what the Greeks did. All right, so understand why I'm so pissed off when I talk about the Greeks and when I hear people say positive things about the Greeks. These people were vile and disgusting from the beginning. And whosoever was found with, okay, there we go. And whosoever was found with any book of the testament, or if any committed to the law, the king's commandment was that they should put him to death. All right. So if you were caught reading the Bible, if you were caught doing what God said to do, hey, get him, kill him. That's what the Greeks did. Thus did they by their authority unto the Israelites every month, to as many as were found in the city. So they would come through every month and check. Oh, is there any Israelites here that's secretly doing what God said to do? Oh, we found one. Get him, kill him. We found one. Get her, kill her. That's what the Greeks did. Now, the 25th day of the month, they did sacrifice upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of God. All right, so they made it official in polluting the temple, polluting the altar, sacrificing unclean meats on the altar. They made it official on the 25th day of the 9th month. All right, and a few years later, can't remember if it was maybe 5, could be 8 years later, the Maccabean family, the Hasmonean family that you read about in chapter 2 of 1 Maccabees, they ended up getting the temple back, setting up a new altar, and cleansing the temple. And that's where Hanukkah comes from. When we drove and when we forced the Greeks out of the temple. That's what Hanukkah is all about. All right. So I'm going to finish this chapter, and I'm get maybe 1-2 more verses on this topic, because I don't want you to forget about the topic. The topic is, why is democracy always failing, especially here in these last days? Why are democracies failing? Why aren't elections proving legitimate? It's because they were corrupt from the very beginning. All right. And they hanged the infants about their necks and rifled their houses and slew them that had circumcised them. Right? So they found out that you circumcised your baby and they killed you for it. All right? And they hanged the infants. They killed the baby too. Howbeit, many in Israel were fully resolved and confirmed in themselves not to eat any unclean thing. But God always reserves a remnant. And he did so in this time as well. All right. And all that happened with that Maccabean family, all that led up to the peacetime that Christ lived in. All right. You can't properly understand the New Testament without understanding the book of Maccabees. All right. Wherefore they rather to die, that they might not be defiled with meats, and that they might not profane the holy covenant. So then they died. So the Greeks didn't care. They saw that the people were honorable, and they said, we're not going to do what you said. We're going to serve our God instead. They said, all right, kill them. That's what the Greeks did. And there was very great wrath upon Israel. All right, so the people, when they saw this, they understood, oh man, it's the curses. We've been in our sins too long. This is the curses. All right, great judgment, great wrath upon Israel. All right. So I do want to point out, because I said something about the Spartans, all right? The Spartans were Israelites, all right? The Spartans, sometimes called Lacedaemonians, were Israelites, all right? That movie 300, first of all, the specific number 300 isn't like about Sparta. It's about Gideon and the Israelites in the days of the Judges, when God said, I only want 300 men to save the people, so they know that God did it. That's where the number 300 comes from. But the people, the Spartans, were actually Israelites. All right, they were Jews. All right. So 1 Maccabees 14. I'm about to prove that real quick. 1 Maccabees 14. Here we go. 14 to verse 16. Now, when it was heard at Rome, and as far as Sparta, that Jonathan was dead, they were very sorry. So Jonathan, again, in Bible History 101, we'll be coming up on Greek time period pretty soon. So I'll get more into the Maccabees at that point. But Jonathan was one of the 5 sons of Mattathias, and he died. And Jonathan was a great man who did great things for Judea. And once he died, all his political allies that were around the region, they mourned just like his family members did. But as soon as they heard that his brother Simon was made high priest in his stead and ruled the country and the cities therein, they wrote unto him in tables of brass to renew the friendship and league which they had made with Judas and Jonathan, his brethren. Right. So again, that's all these Judah, Jonathan, and Simon were all part of these of that Maccabean family. All right. Which writings were read before the congregation at Jerusalem. And this copy of the letters that the Lacedaemonians sent, that's the Spartans. You look up Lacedaemonia or Lacedaemonian, it's the Spartans. All right. And this is the copy of the letters that the Lacedaemonians sent, the rulers of the Lacedaemonians, with the city unto Simon the high priest, and elders and priests, and residue of the people of the Jews, our brethren, send greeting. All right. So this is clearly saying that the Spartans and the Jews were brethren, right? You may think, oh, well, that's just talking about the covenant that they made. That's not talking about they're actually being brethren. They're not of the same race. They're not of the same people. Let's go over to chapter 12. Because remember that the Romans and the Spartans had a league with Jonathan before they even talked to Simon. So here we are in 1 Maccabees 12. And verse 5, we're going to start with 5. And this is the copy of the letters which Jonathan wrote to the Lacedaemonians, meaning the Spartans. Jonathan the high priest and the elders of the nation and the priests and the other of the Jews unto the Lacedaemonians, their brethren, send greetings. So not only did the Lacedaemonians say, hey, we're brothers to the Jews, but the Jews also said, hey, those Lacedaemonians, those Spartans are our brothers. All right. There were letters sent in times past unto Onias the high priest from Darius, who reigned then among you, to signify that ye are our brethren, as the copy here underwritten does specify. So Jonathan said, look, we've known since the days of Onias that y'all are Israelites. All right. At which time Onias entreated the ambassador that was sent honorably and received the letters, wherein declaration was made of the league and friendship. Therefore we also, albeit we need none of these things, that we have the holy books of Scripture in our hands to comfort us. He said, look, we don't need the gifts that you're sending us. We appreciate it, but we have the Bible, and that's what y'all need. Y'all need the Bible as well. All right? Have nevertheless attempted to send unto you for the renewing of brotherhood and friendship, lest we should become strangers unto you altogether. For there is a long time past since ye sent unto us. All right, so he said, look, we're just checking in on you because we ain't heard from y'all we haven't heard from y'all for a while. So we're checking in on you because we're brothers. Verse 11, we therefore at all times without ceasing, both in our feasts and other convenient days, do remember you in the sacrifices which we offer, and in our prayers, as reason is, and as it becometh to think upon our brethren. So he's saying, look, we miss y'all at the feast days. Y'all don't ever show up to the feast days, even though that's what the scriptures say to do. So we miss y'all. Y'all need to be keeping these feast days with us, all right? Just like we pray for all our brothers that are scattered throughout the world, can't make it to the feast days. We wish y'all could make it. That's what he's saying to them. And if you read what he said to the Romans, it was nothing like this. It was just like, okay, we agree to work with each other. Awesome. But he's saying it to the Lacedaemonians, the Spartans, saying, hey, we wish y'all was at the feast days. Why ain't y'all at the feast days? That's what he's saying here. So let's jump down to what the Spartans wrote back. All right. This is verse 20. Arius, king of the Lacedaemonians, to Onias the high priest. So Jonathan is actually recalling on the records. Jonathan is actually recalling upon the records of a former king of Sparta, what he said to Onias. All right. It is found in writing that the Lacedaemonians and Jews are brethren, and that they are of the stock of Abraham. The Spartans knew that they were Israelites. They just weren't doing everything the Bible said to do. So Jonathan was sending a letter saying, look, y'all come on down, visit us sometime. We'll give you the Bible. All right. So going back, that's why I kept this tab open. Going back to what Aristotle was a Greek. He was a European, so you can understand. And when he called what the Spartans were doing childish, it holds an extra layer of meaning. Now that you know the Spartans were actually Israelites. All right. So from there, the whole point, again, I don't want to miss the point. The point is, even what Jonathan was trying to tell the Spartans, look, come back to the Bible. Don't be holding Greek customs. I know y'all holding Greek customs. Come back to the Bible. All right. And here in America, we still holding to this nation that cannot save us. America was not created or established to save you. It was made to enslave you. That's the whole reason why we're here. It's so that God can show us what wickedness is, so that when Christ returns, we can see what righteousness is, how it is much better. But of course, these two cannot coexist. All right? These two cannot coexist. Christ will judge this nation upon his return. And that's why you see things escalating in the Middle East, turning into World War III. Nukes have to pop off. All right? That's the prophecy. All right. Lamentations 4 and verse 17. As for us, our eyes as yet failed for our vain help. In our watching, we have watched for a nation that could not save us. That's what you're doing. Whenever you're voting, you're saying, oh, America, we can fix all our problems. America is here to fix all our problems. We can vote all our problems away. No, you can't. Voting is not the real power. All right. Our power, the righteous power, is in the Word of God. All right. That's the real power. All right. So I just want to show you real quick in Hebrews. I don't know why I exited out of that. I could have just used that one. In Hebrews 4. In verse 12, it says, for the word of God is quick and powerful. That's the real power, is the word of God. All right? That's the real power. And sharper than any two-edged swords, piercing even to the dividing asunder of soul and spirit. All right? It'll hurt you deep inside, and of the joints and marrow, and is a discerner of the thoughts and intents of the heart. Because I can be reading a Bible verse here about some sin that you're going into. I don't even know who's watching this. I don't even know who's on the other side of this camera. I can read a Bible verse, and then you're like, dang, why is he saying this about me? I don't know you. It's the Bible. It's not me. But anyway, back to the original thought, and I'll close it out with this, and then we'll get Matthew 26 after this to close it out. But the whole thing about democracy, the whole concept and idea behind democracy is flawed in its premise, because the idea is what the majority of people want is what's going to happen. That's the whole thing about democracy. But what if the majority of people are wrong? Democracy doesn't care about that. All it cares about is what the majority of people say. But when Christ told you right here in Matthew 7, verse 13, he said, enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. So Christ told you plainly, most of the people are going to die in their sins and do things that are wrong. He's telling you straight up, democracy will never work. That's why the Greeks abandoned the idea for military power and might. They said, look, we're not getting anywhere with this democracy. Let's just force people to do what we want. And that's what America does as well. Believe it or not, America doesn't care about democracy either. They say they do, but if you've been watching for the past few weeks, you would see how that's not what they implemented in Latin America. In Latin America, when democratic leaders were elected that America did not like, they would just overthrow them because they had the power and might to do so. Verse 14, because strait is the gate and narrow is the way. This strait, S-T-R-A-I-T, means strict. All right? Because strait is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. So Christ told you straight up, it's going to be a minority of people which get the kingdom. The majority of people, the popular vote, is not getting the kingdom. Understand that thing. It's the disciplined route, not the route of what everybody wants to do. It's the disciplined route that will get you, the strict route will get you the kingdom. And it's only going to be a few people that make it.